Today we'll break down Bitcoin crossing 100K and also what is the better play here, AI narratives. We'll break it all down for you. You guys don't want to miss it. My name is Pompliano. Welcome back into Tech Path. We will cover this today. It's going to be a good one. I think you don't want to miss it. One thing I do want to thank, and that is Uphold as our sponsor today. So check them out. Just go over to uphold.com. You can, of course, get into all sorts of trading, including enterprise, individuals, even institutional over there. Very easy to do. A lot of opportunity within Uphold because you can actually earn some yields on not only US dollar, but also on RLUSD, by the way, which is pretty cool. So check it out. Use our link down below. It does help the channel. All right, let's get into a couple of points I want to kind of lead off with from the AI narrative that is really starting with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is coming out at CES here in just a few hours. We'll see Jensen Huang, their CEO, do the keynote there. It's going to be pretty big. I think we're going to see a lot of scenarios that play out on this. I want you to listen to what his keynote is. So spend some time tonight watching that keynote, because if he mentions anything around AI agents, what we might see in terms of compute rendering capacities, all of that has some effect on a lot of the projects that we talk about here on this channel, especially in blockchain. Other things that are happening right now, bull market is back. Here was coming in from Kobe Easy's. S&P reclaimed its pivotal 6,000 level, already adding another 900 billion to market cap in 2025. So it looks like money's coming back off the sidelines and into the market. Meanwhile, their price to book ratio has hit a record at 5.3 times above the March 2000 level. So that's a pretty significant thing when you look at the market in general. Many people are asking, do fundamentals even matter anymore? This has become one of those really superheated markets. Always caution when I see those kind of things happen. Obviously, Bitcoin's starting to move as well as another one. Bitcoin surges past 100K for the first time since in 2025. And one of the things you have to look at right now, is a nice little market cap rise, but Coinbase saw its stock climb 8%. Also, MicroStrategy added 6% to its value. And if you look at MicroStrategy, they confirmed it recently bought another 1,070 Bitcoins for a cool 101 million. So this is pushing it, them and their total holdings to around 447,000 Bitcoin. That's crazy. Other things that I want to hit on, of course, Cramer set it up perfectly because he said, hey, Bitcoin's going to fall. And of course, it reverses on him, and the anti-Cramer has just struck again. I want to go to a clip real quick because this will get into a pretty good analysis of how Bitcoin could be a narrative for a lot of new investors when you compare it to the S&P. Take a look.
If you look at what the S&P 500 is, it's really a benchmark for most investors. And if we look in 2024, only 4 or 5 different hedge funds actually outperformed the S&P 500. So it serves as this great benchmark to say, are you doing better or worse than the market? But the problem with the S&P 500 is that it doesn't trade 24/7, 365. Bitcoin does. And Bitcoin is also a very large asset with a very liquid market that is constantly trading. It's the most sensitive asset to global liquidity. And the younger generation is now using this as their benchmark. And their theory is that if you can't beat Bitcoin, you have to buy Bitcoin.
But there's room for 2 benchmarks, isn't there?
There's always room for multiple benchmarks, but I think what really people are trying to get at is what is the market actually performing? And if you look at the S&P 500, gold outperformed the S&P 500 in 2024. And so if gold is outperforming and doesn't have earnings, doesn't have cash flow, a lot of people start asking themselves, well, how much of the S&P 500 performance is actually just currency debasement rather than the businesses getting better?
That's a good point that Pomp makes, is around currency debasement, because this is a scenario that does play out when you look at the inflation narrative and what's happening here in the US, because everybody's trying to basically outrace the dollar and the inflation that it sets upon, which is why Bitcoin and other blockchain and digital assets are becoming pretty much kind of the de facto investment from a lot of the younger audience, which is what he was referencing there. And I think when you look at that, the opportunities here are twofold. One, of course, you go the direction of Bitcoin, and that's a little bit more, I won't call it passive, but a little bit more safe in terms of digital assets. Or you can go the alternate direction, which is moving into the AI narrative. And we'll break that down. Before I go there, though, I want to hit on one other thing, and that is Ripple. Ripple, of course, SEC is settlement rumors are now being talked about. So this is sparking a little bit of optimism for the XRP investors. A couple of points within this. Mark Fagel believes a settlement is likely, particularly with the incoming Trump administration. Also, regulations at ease and prices are on the verge of a breakout. So a lot of good things here. Also, remember that it's possible we could still see an IPO later this year for Ripple. And if that happens, I think that is when we will see some pretty major moves on Ripple in general. If you look at some of the things we tweeted over the weekend, just to give an example, I'm going to zoom in on this. One of these was showing Ripple's RLUSD cracking over 600 million. And this is the thing that was a little bit surprising to me and where this was coming from, because the volume disappeared pretty much just over the weekend. Now, the interesting point is, where's that volume going? Where's it coming from? Is there a test being done with RLUSD? Remember, a lot of this is going to be tying into the banking system. This is a narrative that I think that everybody understands around what has been going. And if you look at the previous tweet that we did, this was the first tweet that went out over the weekend. And this was, of course, was Ripple flipping the euro digital dollar and PayPal's PYUSD, all of which happened in a very short period of time. So I don't know if there's something that we're possibly getting ready for. When I say we, meaning Ripple in general, is getting ready for, but I'm going to keep a close eye on this one very closely because I think this is a one to be watching. Here's a tweet from Brad Garlinghouse talking about Trump's bull market is real. Ripple, of course, is a little bit different because remember, there's been a lot of pressure from the SEC. And the thing he's getting at is that there's so much opportunity here. And the one thing that you could point at today, 75% of Ripple's open roles, their jobs, are US based, while over the last 4 years, the vast majority of those hires were outside the US. So they see it. They understand that the writing is on the wall. The US is their home country. I think they are in the position now where it's all oars up. Let's start putting the speedboat together and start to traipse out into the markets a lot here. Also, one other thing they put in this here. Yeah, here we go. Team Trump is already jump-starting with innovation, job growth. Scott Bessent, David Sachs, Paul Atkins. These are the ones that will essentially guide the economic frontier of the United States, especially with a pro-digital asset administration. So a lot looking good in crypto and also for Ripple in general. Other things I want to get to. Remember the Federal Reserve Board that announced their resignation of Michael Barr. He was the vice chair of supervision there. And he's going to remain in the Board of Governors. But there's a couple of things that were happening over the weekend, and many people probably saw this, and this tweet will kind of give you an example. These were the problems, when you think about Choke Point 2.0, these were the problems that were being held out of the market for banks to do. And many of these, if you look at these, look at this, crypto asset related activity, they were holding that back, Bitcoin transactions, third-party agreements, all of this stuff, tokenized bank deposits, allowing intrabank, all of this will most likely end up within the banking ecosystem in 2025, meaning the fact that there's nobody holding it back now, nobody giving a direct narrative and directive to go out there and put a Choke Point 2.0 on this marketplace. So this could be a big factor starting to transition into mainstream adoption going forward. Other things that are happening right here, the Dixie, of course, is on track for its biggest loss since August 2nd, 2024. Many of the reasons there, of course, you have to look at the dollar dropped after the Washington Post reported that Trump is going to continue. Let me zoom in on that. Trump is going to continue to push on tariffs that would apply to every country out there. Now, if you think of the dollar strengthening or weakening and the potential of digital assets, there's a play right there that is going to be very positive for, again, digital assets going forward. Other things that you got to look out, of course, is how the regular market is starting to place this in terms of narrative, and that is Nvidia has flipped Apple as the #1 market cap at $3.714 trillion. And again, the key here is going to be what Jensen Huang says at CES today, what kind of forward thinking he's looking at for both Nvidia, but also in general, I think for AI, because they're so tied to it. So these are pretty big stories that will affect crypto in a big way. And how will it affect crypto? Well, AI agents. You've heard us talk about this before on the show quite a bit. If you look at the AI-powered agents right now by blockchain, Base leads it, sure, 5161. But look who's number 2 right there, Avalanche, AI-powered Avalanche, 657 agents available. Likelihood is we're going to see some big moves in AI agents. This is a narrative that we've been talking about probably for the last 6 months. The key is that we did not really see many of the platforms and projects start to reveal themselves, and now we're starting to see that. But even though the market is still very, very small. If you look at this report right here from Masari, Agents, bots are already the most active users of public blockchains. And they're looking at three major categories here. Trading, which everybody kind of understands. This is Uniswap. Then you go into stablecoins, Circle, Tether, and then deep-end miners holding 97% of active on-chain agents. And this is just getting started, guys. So imagine what is going to happen within the blockchain that deploy AI agents to start to create a lot of the complexities to make them much easier. Further in this report, one slide up, this was an example of how this is going to explode in comparison to other markets. Autonomous agents appear to be on the cusp of a Cambrian explosion of innovation. Here's the volume potential, and this is just looking at Virtual's protocol. If you look at that right there, Virtual's protocol, this is just the beginning of where we are going to see this market. And if you compare that to NFTs, which was in the last cycle, and even DeFi to a certain extent, it is likely that all of what is going on in the AI sector, especially in the agent sector, could be bigger than all of those previous markets together. So one we're watching for sure. Here, of course, if you look at Avalanche, what is the potential here? Many of the things that we're watching is on the L1s. Of course, Pulsar has been kind of the leader in terms of transactions, but there's a handful of others. So if AI agents start to move their way into gaming, Pulsar, of course, could be a leader within that. It's a good example of how this could explode within the AVAX ecosystem. Don't forget also, Avalanche has their Retro 9000. This is kind of their cultivator or almost like a Y Combinator of growth. It's likely we may see AI agents actually getting grants now within Retro 9000. Think about that for a second because of the opportunities that blockchain brings within all of this. Look at the market comparison between these. Meme coins, if you compare, let me kind of zoom in on this. If you look at market cap on meme tokens, right here, let me kind of zoom in on that. 116 billion. Okay, that's a reasonable one. Yes, memes have been going. When you go to the AI agents token market cap, here's the 14 billion. So if you compare that real quickly, right there, 116 versus 14, good example of how this market could explode and continue. We'll be seeing, I think, a lot of unique use cases and narratives going forward. So it depends on the kind of investor you are. If you think about, hey, I just want to lock in a certain amount of gains, I'm not really looking at risk, and I don't know a lot about AI, then maybe Bitcoin is a great investment for you. If you're looking at future tech and you think about Nvidia, if you bought Nvidia versus most of the mid caps or even other Mag 7, you're probably in the right narrative for what's happening within blockchain right now. So maybe check out many of those kind of projects that are going forward. And even projects, if you look down into the base level, everything from Near Protocol, Akash, Render, many of those have been out there on the front of the AI narrative, but I think now we're starting to see a lot more getting ready to break through. Other things I want to pay attention to, Ethereum stablecoins volume increased from 1.1 billion in 2025. Now we're set for another rally. This could mean a couple of things. Stablecoin volumes on ETH and Solana are over a billion. That's over 200 million in inflows, respectively. So is everybody and is everyone getting ready to start unloading into the market again? Are we ready and poised for another run on Solana, for another run on Avalanche? Could we see a $100 Avalanche within the next few weeks? Maybe a $300 Solana. A lot of people are watching this right now because of the activity with stablecoins. Last up here, if you look at the crypto fear and greed index, some things that are interesting to me is we've popped off of that base, which we were at around 48. Remember, this just happened on the 30th of December, and now we're hovering around 60. So a nice little adjustment here, but definitely not up in our extreme greed range, which was back on end of November, right around Thanksgiving. Outside of that, you go all the way back into March, which was when we saw the previous high outside of early December. But again, are we right there at the cusp of another market breakout? And could this be the last one for a lot of these altcoins to run? Compare that to the altcoin season index, and we are starting to edge a little bit closer. As you can see, altcoin season index now hovering around 55. Last time we really clipped in to the top right here was right around early December at 86. So definitely an opportunity here where we're going to start to see a lot of money come in. And I think the key here is when Bitcoin gets around maybe the 115 to 120 range, that's when you're going to really start looking at it. And I think Ethereum is going to be a very key factor of triggering many of these things going forward. So watch out for a lot of these things. We'll be getting a lot of videos for you guys this week covering a lot of this. So make sure and stay tuned right here to the channel. If you're not subscribed, get subscribed right now. Also hit the little bell. You'll get a notification when we do our live streams. Another thing, if you're not in our Diamond Circle, get in right now. We always leave a link down in the description, and follow me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.